Moving abroad is one of those ideas that sounds amazing right up until the moment you actually decide to do it. For months, maybe years, it's just a fantasy, a little thought that appears whenever you're having a bad day. You're sitting at work, staring at the same spreadsheet you've stared at for the last 6 months, and suddenly your brain goes, what if I just left? Not dramatically. You're not talking about faking your own death and disappearing into the mountains. Just moving somewhere else, somewhere new. The problem is that once your brain discovers this idea, it refuses to let it go. You'll be making dinner and suddenly start wondering what life would be like somewhere completely different. You'll be watching travel videos at midnight and convincing yourself that everyone else on Earth is having a better life than you. You'll tell yourself you're just curious. Then somehow you've spent 3 hours researching visas. That's usually when things start getting dangerous. Because at some point the question changes. You stop asking, wouldn't it be cool if I moved abroad? And start asking, wait, could I actually do this? That's the beginning of the planning phase, or as it's more commonly known, opening an absolutely irresponsible number of browser tabs. At first, everything seems simple. You need a job, a place to live, a flight. Then you discover that getting a job requires paperwork. The paperwork requires documents. The documents require appointments. The appointments require forms. The forms require information you don't currently have because you haven't moved yet. Every answer creates 3 new questions. So you start each evening with a plan. I'm just going to do 30 minutes of research. Suddenly it's 1 in the morning. You have 27 tabs open. You don't remember opening half of them. And somehow you've become an expert on visa regulations despite having absolutely no qualifications in immigration law. Then comes the moment where things become real. You book the flight. That's it. That's the moment. For months, moving abroad exists in the future. Then suddenly there's a date, a real date, with a real ticket. And now time starts moving at approximately 17 times its normal speed. The weeks disappear. Every day someone asks if you're excited. And every time you answer differently. Sometimes you're excited, sometimes you're terrified, sometimes you're convinced you've made a life-changing decision. Sometimes you're convinced you've made a very expensive mistake. Then packing begins. Nobody talks enough about packing. Packing is essentially the process of deciding which objects deserve to continue being part of your life. Apparently, I've formed emotional attachments to things I haven't used since 2018. You pick up random items and suddenly become weirdly sentimental. A coffee mug, an old hoodie, a charger that definitely doesn't work anymore but somehow feels too important to throw away. Your suitcase becomes a battlefield between practicality and optimism. Practicality says, pack essentials. Optimism says, what if I suddenly become the type of person who goes hiking every weekend? Before you know it, half your luggage is made up of items representing a completely fictional version of yourself. Then come the goodbyes. And this part sneaks up on people. You expect to miss family. You expect to miss friends. What you don't expect is missing incredibly random things. The cafe near your house, the shortcut you always take, the supermarket where you know exactly where everything is. You start noticing little routines that have quietly become part of your life. Things you never appreciated because they were always there. Suddenly, every ordinary moment feels slightly important because it might be the last time. Then airport day arrives, and the strange thing is that it doesn't feel dramatic. Movies always show airports as emotional masterpieces. In reality, you're mostly wondering whether your luggage is overweight. You spend months imagining this moment. Then suddenly you're standing in a queue holding a passport while trying not to lose your boarding pass. It's weirdly normal, right until you sit down at the gate. That's when it hits. You look around and realize there's no more planning left, no more researching, no more preparing. The only thing left to do is get on the plane. And eventually they call your flight. You stand up, pick up your bag, and walk toward a completely different version of your life. The arrival is even stranger, because after all that anticipation, nobody is waiting with dramatic music. Nobody announces your personal character development. You just arrive, usually tired, slightly confused, and wondering where you're supposed to go. Everything feels unfamiliar. The signs, the transport, the supermarkets. Even simple tasks suddenly become adventures. You can be a fully functioning adult one day and spend 15 minutes trying to figure out how to buy laundry detergent the next. The first few weeks feel like being a beginner at life. You celebrate tiny victories, successfully finding your apartment, understanding public transport, buying groceries without accidentally purchasing something completely different. Every small success feels enormous. Then something unexpected happens. The city starts becoming familiar. You stop checking maps every 5 minutes. You find a favorite coffee shop. You develop routines. You recognize streets. You know which train platform you need. And one day you'll be walking somewhere when a strange thought appears. You realize you haven't felt lost for a while. Not physically, mentally. The place that once felt completely foreign now feels normal. Not because it changed. Because you did. That's the weird thing about moving abroad. You think you're changing countries. But really, you're changing yourself. The person who nervously researched visas at 1 in the morning isn't the same person casually navigating a new city months later. You've become more confident, more adaptable, more capable than you realized. And eventually, after all the planning, all the stress, all the uncertainty, you reach a moment where you're sitting in your new life doing something completely ordinary. Maybe drinking coffee, maybe walking home, maybe waiting for a train. And you suddenly realize something. This place doesn't feel foreign anymore. It just feels like home. And that's when you know the adventure worked. Different country, same main character.